very much, Benyam. We heard the Holy Father this morning give us a mandate for the future. But 2 years ago, in the World Congress held at the Vatican, Pope Francis said, "We rightly wonder if we are capable of guiding the processes we ourselves have set in motion, whether they might be escaping our grasp, and whether we're doing enough to keep them in check." A few weeks ago, the New York Times wrote, 20 years ago, online images were a problem. 10 years ago, an epidemic. Now the crisis is at a breaking point. Frequently, in addressing this issue, I've heard it said that online child sexual exploitation is a result of unintended consequences, the misuse of technology that is overwhelmingly positive for humanity. Well, I submit that it's time that we begin to anticipate such consequences and fix them in advance, not just react to them after the fact. Today, this is a technology problem. It requires a technology solution. I was asked to speak to you today on behalf of the Child Dignity Alliance, but I also address you as chair of the We Protect Global Alliance, a coalition of 90 countries, 22 technology companies, and 26 non-governmental organizations. Extraordinary work is being done today, much of it by organizations represented by people in this room. But the New York Times was right. The crisis is at a breaking point. And Monsignor Sanchez last night was right when he said this is a crime against humanity. We must have one unifying purpose, and that is to move from concept to action to protect child dignity in the digital world. In October 2017, leaders from academia, research, civil society, government, media, and religion gathered in Rome for the World Congress. Then we presented a Declaration of Rome to Pope Francis, who said we have the freedom needed to limit and direct technology. We can put it at the service of another kind of progress, one which is healthier, more human, more social, more integral. Responding to this challenge, on June 6, 2018, the Child Dignity Alliance was born, a coalition of the willing, committed to protect child dignity and to implement the Declaration of Rome. 6 months later, the UAE, which was present at that first World Congress, convened an Interfaith Forum in Abu Dhabi, bringing together leaders of Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Shintoism, Baha'i, the Sikh faith, and others. The faith leaders unanimously adopted the Abu Dhabi Declaration, which stated, protecting the dignity of children is a cause that will unify and mobilize people across countries, cultures, and faiths. With support from the Human Dignity Foundation, which is here today, the Child Dignity Alliance created working groups to target specific goals. The first was to build global awareness. Led by Baroness Joanna Shields and the support of Harvard Communications in the United Kingdom, we began working to build global awareness of this crisis, a crisis that even today is under-recognized, underappreciated, underreported. The second is led by a world-renowned child psychiatrist who you heard from earlier today, Professor Ernesto Caffo, who's mobilizing many of the world's foremost scholars and researchers to generate better data and better understanding about the true complexity of this problem. The third is led by Father Hans Zollner of the Center for Child Protection, with the support of Professor Elizabeth Letourneau of the Prevention of Child Sexual Abuse Center at Johns Hopkins University, and Dr. Michael Cito of the Royal Ottawa Health Institute. That working group is creating research teams to focus on primary prevention and utilize the public health model to begin to intervene sooner in the lives of prospective offenders before they offend. The fourth was led by Australia's e-safety commissioner, Julie Inman-Grant, who developed a groundbreaking technology inventory, a report on how technology can be used and is being used to combat the proliferation of online child sexual abuse imagery. And I've been honored to lead the fifth, which is working to develop and implement online age verification to prevent children from accessing inappropriate content including online pornography. For generations, we have imposed barriers to children accessing this kind of content in the physical world. Surely we can do it in the digital world. And today we're working with the UK, Australia, South Africa, Canada, New Zealand, the United States, Sweden, and others. There's much more. And the Child Dignity Alliance has only just begun. In the room today are leaders of extraordinary organizations doing heroic work on these problems. The Global Partnership to End Violence Against Children, UNICEF, ECPAT, the Internet Watch Foundation, Thorn, In Hope, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which last year handled 18 million reports of child sexual exploitation, the Canadian Center for Child Protection, the Virtual Global Alliance, We Protect, and others. The Child Dignity Alliance is not a competitor with any of them. We are a partner. We are trying to implement the mandate from Pope Francis to create awareness, utilize science, build knowledge, and prevent these incidents from ever occurring. So there's much to celebrate. But as we convene today, our goal is to move from concept to action. The New York Times went back 20 years. Let me go back 40 years when the U.S. Supreme Court said that what we then called child pornography was not protected speech. It's child abuse. In 1984, we launched the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. In 1985, we created the first child pornography tip line. And by 1989, the problem of child pornography had all but disappeared. But then along came the internet, and the problem exploded. Those with sexual interest in children suddenly discovered that they were not isolated or alone. There were people just like them all over the world. They were part of a global community. And as new technologies emerged, again and again, child sexual abuse and exploitation was viewed as an unintended consequence. Let me cite an example. In the early 2000s, the U.S. Defense Department created a technology to enable people to use the internet anonymously. The intent was noble, including protecting political dissidents and journalists, as Mario mentioned, from retaliation by repressive regimes. But apparently nobody contemplated that it might be used by somebody other than dissidents and journalists. So as a result, the dark web emerged, an anonymous venue for drug trafficking, weapons trafficking, human trafficking, assassins for hire, various kinds of economic crime, and of course, child sexual exploitation. A British university estimated that while just 2% of dark websites are pedophilia sites, they account for more than 80% of dark web traffic. While this was happening, the technology ecosystem changed. Today, most children access the internet via mobile devices. The first iPhone, Jane, wasn't released until 2007. Facebook only began its global expansion, David, in 2006. Twitter only appeared in 2006. In 2009, thanks to Microsoft and Dr. Hani Farid, we launched PhotoDNA to enable companies to match the unique digital fingerprints of the worst images so they could be identified, removed from servers, and reported to authorities. Yet today's technology advances, like end-to-end encryption, put those earlier advances at serious risk. The removal of child sexual abuse material is in jeopardy of becoming a casualty of the quest for total privacy. We have to anticipate the unintended consequences and address them in advance, not just after the fact. I would argue that it's also not enough just to educate parents and children about how to use these tools safely. I praise the efforts of the companies and of lots of nonprofits. We've probably trained most parents 6 or 7 times about how to do this. But the reality is the complexity of the technology and the complexity of the challenge means it's just not a realistic approach. Parents aren't capable And the other thing that happens is it shifts the burden from the provider to the user. This global crisis is not the fault of the children. It is a technology problem, and it requires technology solutions. This morning, Sheikh Latome used the knife example. He said it can be used for good or evil. Well, I would argue, and I said this to him, we need a new knife. We need a better knife. We need to create new technologies which maximize user privacy while ensuring that they do not provide absolute impenetrable protection for exploiters and abusers. Organizations like Thorn, you're going to hear from Julie, are doing exactly that. We need to do a lot more of that. To the companies, our promise is that we will work with you. But it's time for real technology solutions and a real commitment to change. The Child Dignity Alliance is proud to be a co-host of this meeting, but our message to all of you today is that it's time for action. Thank you.